And just quickly in verse or section 4, it says, "Now it came to pass after 2 years, in the 145th year, on the 25th day of that month, which is by us called," and it's pronounced Casalau here, "and by the Macedonians Apelles, in the 153rd Olympiad, that the king came up to Jerusalem, and pretending peace, he got possession of the city by treachery. At which time he spared not so much as those that admitted him into it, on account of the riches that lay in the temple, but led by his covetous inclination, for he saw there was in it a great deal of gold and many ornaments that had been dedicated to it of very great value. And in order to plunder its wealth, he ventured to break the league he had made." Now, this is very interesting, because what is being stated to you is that on this day, the 25th day of the month, as it says, is spelled with a CH, but it's pronounced Casalau. Notice how Josephus is making a distinction, as it's being translated by Mr. William Winston. It states that it's known by us as Casalau, and by the Macedonians as Apelles. So what that goes to show is a revelation that our Father is showing us, is that even though our ancestors knew it by what was known to them as far as the oracles, they called it Casalau, but the Gentiles called it something else. So what we see here is that it was known by two different names. So now when we look at, so just understand, as we call it December today, this is the knowledge of the other nations. Do you understand? But of course we know on legal documents and things of that nature, many of us, we put today's date and what have you. So I'm not being ridiculous. Just understand the times that we're living in, as our Father through his Son edifies you, so you don't be ignorant. Now I'm going to go down a little bit, but as you all are led, you can read it for yourself. But just to go down, because we're going to see if it matches what was being read to you in the book of Maccabees, or Maccabat. Okay? I'm going to get here. It says, still in section 4, but you all can pause it or do what you need to do to see it for yourself. It says, "And when the king had built in," now speaking of Antiochus, it says, "And when the king had built an idol altar upon," and it says gods, we know that's the Almighty. It says, "And when the king had built an idol altar upon the Almighty's altar, he slew swine upon it, and so offered a sacrifice neither according to the law, nor the Jewish religious worship in that country. He also compelled them to forsake the worship which they paid their own Almighty, and to adore those whom he took to be almighty ones," or as it says, gods, "and made them build temples and raise idol altars in every city and village, and offer swine upon them every day." So even according to Mr., they call him Flavius Josephus, it seems that this man bears record, do you understand, of what was being read to you. Do you understand? And many of these so-called scholars, they know of this man. Even Mr. Schofield. Do you understand? So it seems that certain knowledge was known as far as the 25th day of this month called Casalau, which we call December today. So again, there's something significant why this day has been set up. And there's a significance why we as people or human beings today have been taught to observe this particular holy day in this way, with the lights and the trees and the all type of foolishness. And nothing wrong with giving gifts to children. You understand? Nothing wrong with honoring your mother and your father. Yahuwah spoke about these things. Our Heavenly Father commanded us to honor our mother and our father. You understand? But when the whole world is being self-centered towards themselves, it's a problem. We've been taught to be selfish. And here's something interesting. For people who say that the Messiah's birthday is on this particular day, well, if that's so, then how come the whole world who say that they love him, even though they call him Jesus Christ, if you really love the Messiah, and if this day is really his birthday, then why isn't the whole world giving gifts to him? Do you understand? So let's stop with the foolishness. If you love Christmas and you want to worship that thing, go ahead and do it. If you want to continue to do it. But don't sit here and try to put that on Yahuwah the Messiah. Do you understand? Time for the truth to start coming out. And a lot of you are scared to stand up and really talk about it. But our Heavenly Father, Yahuwah, and his Son, Yahushua, they're not scared to talk about it. They're not scared to reveal it to those who really love him. And give them the courage to speak about it through their inspiration. Now, so far we've seen that it was wicked things that happened on this day. But let's focus, as our Father and our King lead us, let's focus on the salvation of Yahuwah. Even though many people died, yes, it was many casualties. But didn't Yahuwah prophesy that it would come to pass? For us being disobedient to him and breaking his covenant? He stopped the Sabbaths. Do you understand? As far as being observed as a nation and the righteous things, he caused it to cease. Now let's look at this here. At this man named Yehuda, as they say Judas, Maccabees. Let's look at Mr. Yehuda here. Because there's something interesting about him. He had the zeal. It's amazing how Yahuwah, during this time, when idolatry, when wickedness, when the temple was ravished, yet throughout the people, there was a group of men who had a love and a zeal for him. And Yahuwah raised them up to do his work. Listen here, let's just go to this. Because it was many battles, and you can read it for yourself. Our Heavenly Father delivered these men. Let's look here. I'm reading from 1 Maccabees. Oh, excuse me. Thank you, my Father, my King. Now, we read where it stated that Antiochus, this gentleman, on December 25th, that he had offered a sow. He offered a pig. Do you understand? Yahuwah created the animal. But in the intention, the wicked intention, he offered this particular animal, it being unclean, to Jupiter, which was the God that he recognized. Let's look at 2 Maccabees. Let's see if this is true now. Because all things have to be proven. Correct. Just right quickly, 2 Maccabees, for those of you who may have it. 2 Maccabees, chapter 6. It states, it says, starting at verse 1, it says, not long after this, the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Yehudi, or the Yehudian, to depart from the laws of their fathers, and not to live after the laws of the Almighty. Do you see that? Listen. And to pollute also the temple in Jerusalem. and to call it the temple of Jupiter Olympius, and that in Garazayam of Jupiter the defender of strangers, as they did desire that dwelt in the place. Do you see that? Verse 3 says, the coming in of this mischief was sore and grievous to the people, for the temple was filled with riot and revelling by the Gentiles, who dallied with harlots and had to do with women within the circuit of the holy places, of the set apart places, and besides that brought in things that were not lawful. Do you see that? So what, and you can read the rest for yourself as you're led to. So what this is stating, according to what Mr. Schofield mentioned, based on his information, we know that he read this. And it stated that it said idol worship, and the pig was offered up. Excuse me, it also said that the temple was changed. They called it Jupiter Olympius. And not getting ridiculous here, but it's interesting. I remember when I was in school, as a younger man, and I remember we had to know about what they call today, as many of you may be familiar with it, we had to be schooled in the knowledge of Greek mythology. And during that time, now we know in the scriptures refer to Mount Sayaun, as some people say Mountain Zion. But in the knowledge of Greek mythology, it was told that this particular, and we know this one is false, we know he's not the true one, but according to that knowledge, what I remember what they taught us and what we were graded on was that the so-called God of gods was Zeus, and that the mountain that he abided, what they said was that he lived in heaven, supposedly, and that the mountain was called Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus. Do you see this? So isn't it amazing, my brothers and sisters, that we're seeing this here? So we know Jupiter is Zeus. We know it was Zeus worship. You understand? On December 25th. So now we got to ask ourselves, as far as in this time now, are people honoring Yahuwah and his son? Or are they honoring something else? And we know that overall it's not honor going up to our Father and his Son, because the fruit is being manifested. This is a day where people say to have the spirit of Christmas, yet affections are turned towards themselves. They may give, but not truly from the heart, but giving for their own self-gratification, to say, I am a good person, I gave to someone today. And they'll try to twist what Yahushua said when he said it's better to give than to receive. They'll use that passage of scripture and implement it in their custom, which many of us was guilty of, wasn't it, my brothers and sisters? Now, turn back to me, please. First Maccabees, for those of you who possess it. And let's look at this here. First Maccabees, chapter 4. Starting at verse 36. And as you read, you can read it for yourself. It's starting at verse 36. It says, Then said Yehuda and his brethren, Behold, our enemies are discomfort. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary. So now where Yahuwah has me to lead, it's a lot of information, but where I'm led to lead as far as reading to you here is pertaining to the battle that Yahuwah delivered. He saved these gentlemen, and all the enemies that came up against him, Yahuwah, according to what is written, delivered them. He saved them. You all may know, as